And this is Verni from Overkill, and you're watching Richard Metal Fan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Episode 288 of Richard MetalFan Interviews, calling from Zoom, and I have the honor to speak with the great, the legendary Verni from Overkill, Verni and the Cadillac Band, the Bronze Casket Company, and solo project Verni. So, how are you doing today, man? Thanks for coming on.
Okay. Yeah, that list is starting to get long. I got a lot of credits, I guess.
Hell yeah. I also love your little setup in the background with the Nightmare Before Christmas. That looks fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah. In my office, I have, God, it's like 1,000 Nightmare and villains and statues and Disney stuff. I love that shit.
That was definitely one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid.
Yep. That's one of my favorite movies as an adult.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So kind of what I want to talk about is, because I know you got your new solo album. I also want to talk about like your musical journey, as well as do a speed run of your discography. But take me back to young Verni. So kind of growing up, what were the first bands that got you into metal? What made you want to slap at a bass?
Well, for sure, a Kiss. It was Kiss, and Gene Simmons. You know, I had no interest in being a drummer, no interest in playing guitar, because Gene Simmons did neither of those things. So I was definitely a Kiss junkie. And then probably that was the first thing. And then I started to expand from there. I got to Black Sabbath and Kiss were pretty much on my turntable, God, forever. But then that was right around sometime in high school was like that. And that's right when I started playing. And I'm kind of self-taught. So I wasn't going to learn playing to those records. It was too advanced for me. So I started listening to right around that time too, the Ramones, Sex Pistols, Damned, got Generation X, Misfits, like all that kind of stuff. And that I could play. That's pretty straightforward stuff to play on the bass. So it's kind of, my turntable went back and forth between those kinds of things. And then I kind of discovered more metal along the way. You go into the record store, probably like a lot of people my age and my generation, you go into the record store and you bought albums by the cover. I didn't know anything about this. No internet, nothing like that. So I can remember buying Rainbow Rising just because the cover looked cool. That was on my turntable for a while. And then you expanded. AC/DC Powerage, like that was the first AC/DC record I got. I kept buying Ramones records. And then I kind of, as I got to be a better player, and then kind of the new wave of British heavy metal started coming along, I kind of geared a little bit more away from the punk stuff and more towards the metal, because a lot of that stuff was starting to mix the two, which was really kind of what I thought was cool. You know, Motorhead was there, Maiden had a lot of punk in their stuff too. A lot of the British new wave of British heavy metal had kind of elements of both. So I was kind of in that camp for a long time too, and then learned how to play a little bit better. And so playing along with Maiden records and Sabbath records, it was more challenging. So I kind of got into that a little bit more. And then, basically went on from there. Then we were kind of in the thick of things. It was kind of the thrash scene, and we were right there. We were all kind of doing it at the same time. And then, just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, because I believe your first band was the Lubricants. I guess it was like you and Bobby. That was like your first band. I'm always curious about that. Like nobody ever really talks about them.
It was me and Rat. Bobby wasn't in that. So it was me and Rat, two guys from high school. And that was the first band that we had. And we had, oh God, we probably had an album's worth of original material. And we played CBs, we played Max's, Kansas City in the City, played Trudy Hellers. We got whenever we could in the city during the punk scene. And we did some shows in Jersey. And then that kind of grew into Overkill. But we never really recorded, never went in the studio, never recorded anything, of any kind of quality at all. The guitar player had like a little reel-to-reel, and we did some recording on that. But I actually thought if I ever did any solo shows, that I would kind of do a little bit of everything. I do some Bronx Casket, some solo stuff, maybe an Overkill song. But I said, you know what, maybe I should do a Lubricant song, pull one of the old demos up and just do one. So that could be a fun thing. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. But tell me about like forming Overkill, because I love those first couple demos, the Power and Black and even the self-titled EP. I just think it's like very raw sounding. Like, where were those recorded at?
Um, hmm. EP we did at a studio in Jersey somewhere. Um, and I think the demo we did some of it at a studio in Jersey and some of it at a studio in Staten Island, if I remember right. Um, that was, just that's what everybody did back then. Self-financed. You had a few bucks. Everybody in the band saved up. You went into the studio. You had no idea what you were doing. You had to rely on the engineer to kind of help you to get it to sound anything like what you actually sounded like in the room. I remember when we went to the EP, the guy said, "Bring in some albums of sounds you like." Of albums you like with the sounds you like, so I have some idea what you're talking about. So all of us brought in something different. I think Bobby Gustafson, he brought in Metallica, probably Kill 'Em All. Said, "I like the guitars on this." Rat brought in Creatures of the Night, Kiss record. I said, "I love these drums." And I brought in Holy Diver. I like the
Great
bass on
album.
that. Yeah, and I like the bass on that. So, and he listened to the EP. It doesn't sound anything like any of those records, but that's what we brought in. As our dream wish list. If we could kind of sound somewhat anything like this, which we didn't. With whatever, I don't even know what it cost us back in the day. It was probably a 16-track studio. And you did the best you could. I remember the engineer telling us when he listened to some of the guitars, he's like, "These guitars are definitely doubled." And that was a new thing to us. It was like, we were like, "Doubled?" I said, "Yeah, you play the guitar and then double it again. It just makes it sound bigger." And I said, "Well, let's double the bass." He goes, "No, we don't do that with bass, just guitars."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was all a learning process all the way across the board, and I think we did the EP in like a day.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was a day we did everything. I can remember leaving that studio. It was daylight, six,
Yeah.
7 o'clock in the morning, all through the night. We had 24 hours. We used 24 hours.
Which is
Uh,
nuts. It's
yeah,
because
but
I know like
that's
Black Sabbath recorded their first album in one day.
well, I mean, that's a whole album. This was just 4 songs or whatever, and it took us that long. But I can't even remember if we played live. We must have just mic'd everybody up in a room and just played. I don't. That's a long time ago, man.
Yeah.
I barely remember what we were doing back then. So, but it was something like that.
All right. And then, of course, got signed to Megaforce Records and you dropped Field of Fire, which I think is a
Yeah.
very underrated thrash metal debut album. So, what was sort of like the thought process going into making the debut full length Overkill album?
What was the thought
Yeah,
about
pretty
doing that?
yeah, pretty much like the whole writing and recording process.
Well, we had when we got signed to Megaforce, we had been doing shows. We did a ton of headline shows. We had a fan base. We had following. We were doing whatever it was, 1,000 people a night, and we were selling merchandise. We were selling demos. We did the EP. So when we got signed, all our songs were done. It was just a question of trying to record them to have some semblance of what we actually really sounded like. And we went, Megaforce was doing everything up at Pyramid Studios with Alex Pirialis. So we went up there because I think Anthrax had just been there. Was SOD then? No, that might have been the next record. But I think Anthrax had just been there and the Rods recorded there. And so Alex was the engineer at the studio, and we used Carl Kennedy, who's the drummer in the Rods. He was going to be our producer. And it was all kind of new to us. We went up there and they said, "You're going to go into this rehearsal room for a week with Carl, and you'll play the song and you'll go through the songs, and he'll help tweak them and help get your playing tighter to get ready for the studio." So we did that. And then we went in the studio again, not really knowing much. You were totally relying on engineers and the equipment to make it sound halfway decent. But we knew the songs inside and out. We had been playing them for a long time. So we just blasted through them pretty quickly. Alex had us sounding pretty good right away. Carl did a pretty good job too. He was a good drummer and knew how to get decent drum sounds. So it was fun. It was fun doing that first record.
Yeah, like Rotten to the Core, Hammerhead, all classic songs.
Yeah, there was a lot on that first record. That's kind of what we built our base on, was that first group of songs. And some of them were on the demo and on the EP. They just better recordings of it to get to there, and then a bunch of stuff was new. And then we even had some material, like I think Deny the Cross and Wrecking Crew, we had just about written. If they weren't written, they were pretty close when we did this record, but we held them off for the next one.
Yeah. And yeah, and of course, next year we'll mark the 40-year anniversary of Feel the Fire. Is there any chance of a celebration for this album?
I have no idea. We're not talking about it, but sometimes you get approached by a promoter and they have a great idea, come and do this festival show, or come and do this, because you do the whole record. And maybe if something sounds like fun, but usually we don't like to, do a record. We've been asked a million times, come and do just your first 2 record show. It's like, that's no fun. We like playing our new songs.
Yeah, just focus on the present, not the past.
Well, I mean, we like playing some of those songs too, but only those songs. Maybe, it could be fun. I don't think like a whole tour or anything like that. That would be, I don't think we'd be interested in that. But maybe it was a festival show or a few festival show. We just did Feel the Fire, and then maybe a few extras on top of that. But I don't know, might be fun. But really, we haven't been talking about it.
All right. And then next up, Taking Over. I thought was a really great follow-up. So what was it like going from Feel the Fire to Taking Over?
I think the main thing between those 2 records is we weren't exactly happy with the guitar sound on the first record. We just didn't think it was big enough. So we spent a lot of time on trying to get the guitars. That's where we learned you don't have to just double the guitar. You can put 4 guitars on there if you want, which is, I think, is what we did. And we did that without Carl. We did it with just Alex because we were comfortable working with him, and he seemed to be more in touch with us getting good sounds. We were more concerned about sounds than with our songwriting at that point. We didn't feel like we needed a producer so much for the songs because nobody knew what thrash metal was at that point. Even the record companies would defer to us and say, we don't know anything about this music. Just whatever you're doing's working. So just keep doing what you're doing. So nobody really bothered us with the songs as far as it should be more like this or more like that. And, but we were pretty happy with that. We were really pretty happy with everything with that record except the cover.
Yeah.
We were not fans of the cover.
Yeah, with all of you with the guns and stuff.
Well, we liked that was the whole concept of the thing, to have the guns in your face. And I remember that came from, I think it's the Blues Brothers. We were watching the Blues Brothers, and there's a part maybe where they get knocked down and they kind of look up and there's like 1,000 guns in their faces. And we're like, wow, that image of that is like really cool. We should do that. So we took the picture, but then when the nuclear explosions came behind us and the purple and the whatever, we were like, the hell is all this? And we kind of made it more black and white so that it looked more like an army scene, but it didn't really pop. So we're like, okay, we'll just roll with this. And that's what we wound up doing. Never really loved the cover.
Yeah, I also love the last song on here, Overkill 2, The Nightmare Continues, just as a continuation of the self-titled song from Feel the Fire. What made you guys decide to sort of do like a part 2?
I think we had talked about that for a long time, and we had always thought it would be 3 or 4 parts. Also, Venom had done something. I forget what it was. Did they do something like part 1 and part 2? Something like that.
I can't remember.
Oh, they did. Their records were almost like that, like Welcome to Hell, Black Metal, Possessed, whatever the exact order was. Their albums were almost like a 4-part kind of thing. Anyway, I remember us getting that idea from something like that. But we kind of even knew on the first one that we were going to do another Overkill.
Yeah, and then you did a third Overkill, Under the Influence, off of Under the Influence, which I love this album, especially the introduction to Charlie on the cover, where I consider it kind of like you guys is kind of like Eddie from Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had it. He's on the back cover of Feel the Fire. He's on the back cover of Taken Over. But that was Under the Influence was the first time we said, let's put it on the front. And we got some good artists. The other ones were more kind of hand-drawn, like more like a logo kind of thing. But we wanted something to be a little bit more realistic. So, I mean, that's been on, I don't know how many of our album covers in one version or another now.
Yeah,
15, 18, something like
probably.
that.
You got a ton of albums.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I also love apparently like the original artwork had like some other like guys up in the front, but they were apparently like removed and stuff. I was just curious like the reason for that.
I remember when we did the first one, there was like a bunch of people being called, like walking through the sewer. I can't remember why we decided we didn't like that. We said, let's just keep the one guy coming instead of all the people. I don't remember exactly why, but yeah, there were people in there and a different thing.
Yeah. Yeah, then of course we get to the Years of Decay, which in my opinion, this is my favorite Overkill album, and hard to believe this year does mark 45 years since it's been, or 35 years since it's released. So how do you feel about this album, and what's like your favorite memories recording this?
That one, no, that was, I would say, the first one we did with Sid, but no, that was the second one we did with Sid. When we did Under the Influence, Rat was gone. It was our first record with Sid, and he had just kind of was still trying to feel his way into the band, like where he fit in, what we did. And we did a lot of touring on Under the Influence with Slayer, and we did some with Megadeth. And I think he got to see, like watch Slayer a little bit, watch how Lombardo played. He wasn't as deep into the thrash stuff as we were. He had come from more like a metal background, playing with Paul Di'Anno. And we wanted that. We didn't want just some thrash guy. We wanted somebody who had some metal chops as well. But it took him a while playing the band to really get it together. And then on Years of Decay is where I really thought that he played really well. It's like he had the music down at that point. He knew what was heavy. He knew how to, and he was a great drummer too. So he knew how to make, he was a great double bass player. He just knew how to play thrash metal at that point. So I think that's why the songs kind of jumped as far as on that record compared to the last one, was mostly with Sid.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how it has like Elimination, the title track, Evil Never Dies. Dies, all great songs, even Elimination, which you still play to this very day.
Yep. I don't think we've ever not played Evil Never Dies. I think Evil Never Dies and Rotten to the Core are probably the only two songs we have never not played.
Yeah, because if you don't, there'll be a riot.
Well, it's, I remember seeing Maiden's kind of thing, like their Hallowed Be Thy Name wasn't in the set for the first time. I'm like, why?
Yeah. Or did they have like some legal stuff or something with it? I can't remember. I remember reading something about it.
Maybe that's why. But I know as a fan, when I go to a show, I want to hear the most popular songs. I'm up for some new ones, and I'm up for a deep cut or two. But don't give me 7 songs off the new record, because I might not even have it. So I just try to bring what I would want to see and hear as a fan to our shows too. And if that means, I'd love to, for the band, we would love nothing better than to do 15 new songs, or really deep cuts or whatever. But the fans would be, they just wouldn't be into that. It's, you got to do whatever it is, 8 or 9 that you have to do. And then, you get to pick maybe 8 or so and kind of switch it up a little bit. It's kind of roughly how we do a set.
Yeah. Then we move on to the 90s with their first album, with this album, Horoscope. I loved this album. I consider it kind of like the second kind of like era of Overkill, with now having like 2 guitarists in the band. Now the band's a 5-piece. So how did that sort of like affect sort of like the dynamic within Overkill?
Well, it was a little weird because Bobby wasn't in the band anymore. So it was just kind of on me and Blitz to make sure that we kind of kept the ball rolling. I think even our record company was a little skeptical, can just, you and Bobby and Sid, kind of pull this together. And I remember they said, we told them we wanted to do the 2 guitar player thing. And they said, well, let's see it. So we auditioned people, we picked our 2 guitar players, and we did we just did like a little showcase almost at L'Amour's. Our managers owned L'Amour's. And so we set up on the stage, we brought our gear in there, we had them come down, and we played a bunch of new songs, and with the 2 guitar players. And they were just like blown away. They said, wow, this is a whole nother level. And they really loved it. So we knew that, okay, this is going to be okay. We'll just keep rolling with this. And there was some different stuff on that artwork too. That was a completely different cover at first, and then wound up being that cover.
It looks fucking badass. Definitely one of the best Overkill covers I've seen.
Yeah, that was a fun record to do. We did that with Terry Date. We had done Years of Decay with Terry Date, and we did this one with Terry Date too. And we loved working with him. We had a lot of laughs and a lot of fun with Terry. And we're more comfortable with sounds and in the studio. You know, this was our 5th record at that point. We were, you know, not green anymore. That was a fun record to do.
Yeah, I also love how you did the cover of Edgar Winter's Frankenstein. I'm always curious, what made you guys decide to cover that song?
That's just a favorite song of mine. Had been forever, and I had wanted to do that song forever. And now that we had the 2 guitar player thing, all the harmonies that are in there, we're like, wow, this could really be something cool and different. So, and I think we did that for that whole tour. But really, yeah, it was just a song that I loved growing up when I was a kid and thought could be cool with the 2 guitar player thing.
Right. Then next up is I Hear Black, which in my opinion is a very underrated album. I feel like it's like the most experimental Overkill album to date. So tell me about making that album.
That one, I don't love that record. I mean, it's okay. But for where I think we just want to do something different. So our battle cry on that record was, if we've done it before, throw it out. Or if it sounds like Overkill, throw it out. And I think what I learned from doing that record is what we were doing was making us popular and people liked us. So why on earth would you purposely not do that? But, you know, at the time, we were just looking to try something new and different. And yeah, I mean, some of it, I listened back to some stuff, you know, there's a few moments on there, but and it was a really hard record to make. It wasn't any fun in the studio. I have very few good memories of anything about that record as far as making it. It's hard. So, I mean, I think that's why the next record, WFO, is, you know, so angry and aggressive and in your face. And we were just, you know, we were just determined on that record to come roaring back and do what we do.
I love this album. It's, in my opinion, I feel like one of my favorite Overkill albums. I put in like top 3 favorite albums from you guys. I believe this year does mark the 30-year anniversary of this album. Like, I wish you played more songs from that. I wish you played like Where It Hurts, Fast Junkie. I know you played Bastard Nation one time, and I was like, fuck yeah.
You know, we play a lot of songs off of that. They're just in rotation. Where It Hurts shows up here and there. Under One shows up. We played Gasoline Dream forever. Geez, what else is on it? We played the Weight sometimes. We played, you know, that's for me anyway. That's one of my favorite Overkill records, if not my favorite. I love all the songs on that. I love the production on that. I love the cover. Everything about that record.
Yeah. I love how the bass is like turned up really loud, because I've actually had interviewed Bobby last year. He described it as kind of like your murder spree.
Well, I remember when we made the record, I would play it for some people and they're like, what's that sound? And I'm like, what's that? What sound? That sound, I hear like a sound. And I'm listening and listening. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's a fucking bass. I know you don't hear it on any other records, but yeah, that's what that is. It's a bass guitar, not low end. Some people will confuse the two things. It's like low end. Oh, you hear the bass? That could be on the guitars. It could be on the kick drum. I always wanted to hear the bass, not feel it. I don't care where you feel it. I wanted you to hear it. And on WFO, you could definitely hear it.
That's probably the best bass tone I've heard on an Overkill album.
Yeah, I have tried every single record. To this day, I pull up that record and try and match it. But it's, so much of a sound on a record is determined by what's around it. And so our sounds around that have changed so dramatically. Even if I had the exact same setup, which I have and have put up, I don't know how many times, it just doesn't sound the same. So it's like one of those things, you just get a rare moment where you kind of get it just right and everything kind of works around it. Because I love the bass sound on that too. And but at least I got it on that record. So
yeah. And then tell me about making The Killing Kind. I thought that was interesting. So what was it like going from WFO Wide Fucking Open to The Killing Kind?
The Killing Kind. That's kind of almost like a forgotten record
Yeah.
for me. There's some cool stuff on that. I think we had Chris Tangrides mix that one. And he passed away, but we loved working with him too. We had a lot of laughs, a lot of fun with him. And was that our first record with Joe and Seb?
Yeah. I think I can't remember.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. So that
Yeah,
was,
yeah, it is correct. Rest in peace,
yeah. So,
Sebastian.
yeah. So I remember Sebastian had auditioned for us earlier on Horoscope, but we went with Merritt instead of Sebastian. So when Merritt and Rob were gone, Sebastian was our first call. And we liked him personally. He was a good player. And he knew this guy, Joe. He said, I have a friend of mine, Joe, that I play in a band with right now that sings and he's also a guitar player, and he'd be great too. So we auditioned them both, and it just felt comfortable. It sounded good. They were kind of into the scene, and they played well together. And I went up, I think Tim was in the band by then. So me and Tim, we went up to, God, where are they? Oh, to Rochester. And we did I had 3 songs or 4, maybe 3, 4, 5 songs, something like that. And we demoed up them with those 2 guys just to kind of see how it would go. And and it went really well. So we were like, okay, we'll just roll on from there. And then we did, and that was a fun enough record to make too. Not too bad. That went pretty smoothly.
Yeah, and then we got From the Underground and Below. I thought was a pretty good album, a good follow up to The Killing Kind. Literally came out like a year later. So did you start writing for this right after Killing Kind?
Probably pretty close. That might be my favorite record. I really love that one. And we play a lot of songs on that, and we actually have to take songs out of the set because we will load up on those songs because we just like that record. And that was the first record we did with Colin Richardson mixing. And I remember when he came in, I think the first song we were mixing was I'm All Right. And we were out of the studio for a while. He was kind of doing his thing. We came into the studio, and I just remember sitting in the back of the room going, holy shit, it sounds fucking great. And I was like, whatever we're paying him is not enough. It was just, I love the way it sounded. So I remember driving home with that record going, I really, really, really like this record.
Yeah. And then next up is Necroshine. Definitely another one of my favorite Overkill albums. And this year does mark the 25th anniversary of that album. So tell me about making that album.
Necroshine. Same thing. We went up to the Carriage House up in Connecticut. We did a lot of records up there. And the guy, Andy, who was the engineer there, we have done a couple of records with him now, and we were comfortable with him. So we did this one on our own. Colin didn't mix this. We did this one. This was the first record we did completely on our own. Produced, mixed, we did everything on that record. And I remember thinking the same thing on that record, that it sounded really good. The guy, Andy, we had worked with him. We were really comfortable working with him. Joe and we would live up there. We'd go up there for 6 weeks or whatever it was. We'd live at the Carriage House in Connecticut. And had done a bunch of records up there at that point. And we were comfortable. The band was comfortable. That was a fun record to do. Went pretty smoothly. Yeah, we like a lot of songs on that record too.
Yeah. And then that same year, you also started up the Bronx Casket Company, did the self-titled album. So how did the inspiration of that come to be? Because that sounds completely different from what you're doing with Overkill.
Yeah, I was just talking to Jack Frost, who plays in that. He came to an Overkill show that we just did, and they were telling me that it's 25 years since the first Bronx Casket record. So I think they're going to release vinyl for that. And they had asked me about maybe doing some shows. I'm like, I don't know. That could be fun. We really never, we did a few shows, but never brought it to Europe, never did anything. So, but why did I start doing that? I think I just looking, to try something different.
Yeah.
I always, there was kind of 3 records on my bucket list that I always wanted to do. I wanted to do like a doomy kind of record. I wanted to do a punk record, and I wanted to do a big band record. They were on my list for as long as I can remember. So the first one that I took a stab at was Bronze Casket, where it's kind of doomy, kind of gothy. And that was a fun record to do, challenging a little bit because didn't want to thrash it up so much. So, but it was a lot of fun because that was the first time I was working with like keyboards and female background vocals and like big orchestrated parts, and so it was fun. And I love vampires and vampire movies, so the whole visual and the themes that went with it was I loved and had a lot of fun with too.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely sounds great. It kind of reminds you a little bit of like Black Sabbath meets Typo Negative.
Yeah, a little bit. There's definitely some Typo in there for sure. I was listening to Typo a bunch around then. I was late to the party on Typo when they were really popular. I really didn't know about them. And then much later on, I was like, wow, this band's great. How come I don't know about this band? It's just, they weren't thrashy enough for me, so I never really dialed into them. But that's right around the time that I started listening to them. So I'm sure some Typo was creeping in there.
Yeah. And then kind of going into 2000, you went back in the studio with Overkill and you did Bloodletting. I thought was a really great, underrated album. I consider it kind of almost in the same vein as Necroshine. So tell me about that.
That was, God, I can't remember that record. We mixed that with Colin. Colin mixed that one. And that one was a little bit of a weird record to do. I think because we were just a 4-piece for that record. So we weren't a 5-piece band. It was just me and Dave and Tim and Blitz in the studio. So it never exactly felt exactly right to me. Because we were rehearsing as a 4-piece. It was hard to get my head around the songs on that record. But I do, one of the things I like about that record is the cover is just completely an oddball compared to like every other cover we have. That one's like, what the fuck is this? It doesn't even look like an Overkill record, but that's kind of cool about that. And I like a lot of the songs on there, but it is not, to me, it's not up on the level of Underground or Necroshine for me.
And then kind of going to 2001, you did the next Bronze Casket album, Sweet Home Transylvania. Yeah, I like that album. Tell me about like what was that like going from the self-titled to that album?
Well, I was much more comfortable. I had worked with a lot of the people before. I was more comfortable singing and doing some vocals. And I had worked, it's the same engineer and same studio that we were doing the Overkill records at. So I was comfortable with the people that we were working with there. It was just a next step up all the way across the board. I thought the songs were more focused and I thought the production sounded better. You get more comfortable anytime you do the second record. It's usually, not always, but it's usually more focused and a little bit up, hopefully better than the record before it. And a lot of the artwork on that was just so great. I think I did, it was crazy back then. The artwork on there, every single song has an album cover. That's what I wanted. So it was like I could name the album, any of the songs on a record, and I had a cover for it, which is a lot of fun, a lot of work for the guy I was working with to do all these album covers and themes. But a lot of crazy artwork on there. We did some photo shoots with this vampire girl and a lot of vampire imagery in there. So that was fun. I was pretty proud of that record when that one came out.
Yeah, and of course you started singing a little bit. So what kind of inspired you to be like, I want to sing?
Well, I was singing on all the demos, and then I would give the demos to Mike Hideous, who was singing as well. And I think somewhere in there, I thought, well, maybe I'll just do a few. I love bands where there's multiple singers in a band. The Biohazard guys switching from singer to singer. I love that. The guys in the Eagles, even Kiss and Paul Stanley. I love when there's multiple singers in a band. And it's like this guy's song and this guy's song. So I thought, well, that could be kind of cool if Mike did some songs and I did some songs. And so that's really where that came from.
Cool. And then kind of going into 2003, you did the next Overkill album, Killbox 13. I think it's another underrated album. I consider it kind of like almost a forgotten album too. So tell me about that.
Killbox, I really love that record too. I think it's the best sounding record we've ever done. in all the years, just sound wise. I think Colin did that one too, probably. He'd done a lot of records of ours that sound really good. Yeah. Actually, Colin came in and produced on that one too. And we did that one. We felt like we kind of wanted to almost have it feel like a debut album again. It's kind of we changed the bat logo a little bit. We felt like we got back to a really good sound. We thought we got back up to a level that we wasn't Relics right before that record. I thought Relics was.
I think that Relics was afterwards.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Relics was after Killbox?
Yeah, Killbox was 2003 and
Right.
Relics was 2005.
Oh, okay. But I really love that record too. There's a lot of great songs on that record. Yeah. And so Bloodletting was before that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, because I think that's why we had that feeling of kind of getting back to basics. We had full band at that point, and Colin coming in. It just felt more. It felt more right than Bloodletting to me.
Yeah. And then tell me about making Relics, because I love this album too. And then, next year will be the 20-year anniversary of this album. So tell me about making this album.
I don't love that one so much. I would say that I really don't like the way it sounds. Mostly, I think the songs are pretty good. I think there's a lot of good songs on it.
Yeah, like Old School is like one of my favorite songs. I especially like that chorus. It almost sounds very like a piratey kind of song, like you do.
Yeah, it definitely has some of that. I mean, I think who knows? Maybe I was listening to Dropkick Murphys at the time. To me, it has a kind of Dropkick Murphys vibe. And the beer hall kind of drunken Scottish guys running around singing. That's kind of what we were going for. But I do like a lot of the songs on that. This is the first one we did. I built a studio, and this was kind of our first time using the studio. And there's a lot of new equipment, a lot of new things, a lot of new people. And so I think it kind of missed the mark on some of the production. Could have been better on that record. I thought the songs were pretty solid for the most part. I even the cover, not the cover, the title I thought was confusing. I think about it now. I'm like, we had some different. We should probably just sort of wrote Relics in regular letters, but we're trying to be clever. And if I had it to do over, I just wrote Relics.
Yeah, I thought it was like really, and I thought it would be because I think this was like your 14th album, and the XIV sort of being the Roman numeral.
Yeah, no, that's what it was. But I really like Relics XIV, Relics XIV. I was like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, should just getting too clever.
Yeah. And then that same year you also did the next Bronze Casket album, Hell Electric. Yeah, that's like a tongue twister. So tell me about that album.
Boy, we were just kicking them out, weren't we? Jeez.
Yeah.
Electric was a little bit more gothy, I thought, than the other two records. Not as heavy as either of the other two. A little bit more gothic. The songs were, I thought the songs were really, really good on that one. I felt like I really found the niche of writing these kinds of songs. Really hooky, big, huge, lush, harmonies and keyboards and orchestrations on that one. Just another, rung up the ladder. I sang a bunch of songs on that, got even more comfortable singing. So, yeah, so that was, and pretty much followed. Oh, I think Mike Romeo mixed that with me together. So it was the first one I did with him, and he had contributed. Mike from Symphony X, he contributed a lot of orchestrations, a lot of keyboard stuff. He's great with that shit. And so all in all, I thought that was the next step up as well. I thought it was a progression to get to that as well.
Yeah, and I think your voice definitely sounds great, because I know you have different usages of your voice, because it sounds different from like Overkill, because I remember hearing like Old School with you doing your backing vocals. It definitely reminds me a lot of like Lemmy a little bit with your voice.
Yeah, it can when you get with Overkill because I'm yelling, you know. So it's like, but then on the other stuff, you have to sing a little bit more. So um, that's why, you know, I could sing with some of these other things I do for a week. My voice is fine. And when I'm out with Overkill, after the fourth show, I can't talk. Um, so I just have to get better at that.
Yeah. And then kind of going back to Overkill, you did the next album, Immortalis. I love this album. It's definitely one of the best like modern Overkill albums. So what was it like making this album?
um, oh, we had Randy from Lamb of God came and
On
sang on that
Skull and
record.
Bones. So how did he
Yeah,
end
yeah.
up singing on that? I actually saw them last night and they were kick
Oh,
ass.
we were on Gigantor with Megadeth and Lamb of God, and we just became friends with those guys. And when we were doing the record, Blitz said, you know, I talked to Randy or somewhere on tour. I had this idea. What about having Randy come on this song? And I was like, that'd be fucking great. Um, so he called him up and he's like, sure, send me the thing. You know, he came in, either drove up or flew up or something like that. I just remember we did it at my studio, and you know they're all Virginia guys. You know they're all kind of like rednecky guys compared to us Jersey guys. You know it's like a definite difference between the guys. I remember coming in the studio, and I have a big window, and he's in the other room in the window, and the mic is set up, and he's in there doing his vocals, and I come walking in, I'm just standing in the back of the room and singing. I'm going, wow, this sounds fucking great. And then I see him, he kind of like, clears his throat and he spits. And I look like, and this is my studio. I'm looking through the window going, this fucking redneck is spitting on the fucking floor. Where the fuck does he think he is? It's fucking Jersey. We don't spit on a fucking floor. And then he does it again. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And he's like, oh, he's got a big garbage can in there. It's just he has to keep doing that. I was like, oh, okay. I didn't see that part.
Oh.
but yeah, that was great for him to do that. And that was a fun record to do overall. We started getting better at working at my studio and getting comfortable there, getting comfortable with the sounds, people we brought in. It just, that became now our home. We were doing records steadily there, probably by the time we did that record.
Yeah. And then of course we get to Ironbound. I thought this was another great follow-up to Immortalis. Tell me about like that, because I love like the title track, Even Bring Me Tonight is definitely some great songs in the current Overkill kind of set.
That one was we really loved that one, and the fans really loved that one. They kind of made it clear that was almost like we jumped up, I mean, a notch all the way across the board when we did that record. Our shows were bigger, we were getting paid more. It just seemed like there was a whole new interest in us. It definitely seemed like we kind of jumped up when we did that record. It was in all the magazines, the reviews, we were top of all the reviews. It just seemed like that record struck a chord with everyone. The way it sounded, the energy in the songs, the cover, the artwork, that was just everything about that record really felt like we were at the top of our game. It's like, okay, we got this now.
Hell yeah. And then going into 2011, you did the last Bronx Casket album, Antihero. I thought it was really great. I especially love how you did the covers of Death on Two Legs by Queen and My Way by Frank Sinatra. So what was it like making the last album?
That Bronx record, I kind of wanted to try some different stuff. I felt like I had kind of done the big gothy thing and all that like pretty well. And I did some more of that, but I really wanted to do some stuff that had some industrial edge to it. At that point I was really listening to like Rob Zombie a lot, and I just fucking absolutely loved those first few Rob Zombie records, the White Zombie records and the Rob Zombie records, and I was really wanted to try. Yeah, and I really wanted to try some of the programming stuff. So some of the songs on that record, there's a handful that had some programming stuff. I worked with this guy, Bill Sarver, who worked on Riggs's solo records. Riggs turned me on to him. He did a great job on some cool stuff. And then I had Charlie, the keyboard player, almost, I didn't want to do so industrial, so he almost did like some keyboard stuff that felt like that through some of the songs. It came up with some really cool ideas that were new, that were kind of different, that I really liked. And that one too, I think was the first one I played all the bass, played all the guitars, sang all the songs. And it was the first one where I did everything.
Yeah,
Um,
kind of in a way, it's sort of like the precursor to end up doing the solo stuff.
yeah, I almost called it Verni. It was almost the first. Really, that's more like the first Verni solo record. I just thought, I said, well, I guess I can continue the Bronx moniker because I can play whatever I want in Bronx. I could switch genres if I felt like it. But really, that's really probably should have been my first solo record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go moving on to 2012, you go back to studio to do the next Overkill album, The Electric Age. Love this album. This is definitely one of my favorite albums from the year. It came out right when I was graduating from high school. So tell me about making this album.
That almost feels like I always think of Ironbound and the Electric Age like Years of Decay and Horoscope, like a pair. They feel like a pair to me. It's kind of this it's very similar mindset, very similar approach to writing the songs, recording the songs, album cover, just kind of like I think it was let's continue what we were doing with Ironbound and make it try and make it even better, but let's continue that same thought. We love that record too. I think the band
Yeah,
loves that
like
record.
Electric Rattlesnake is still a banger.
Yeah, that's in a set like all the time. I know Eddie. I remember Eddie Trunk calling me, and he was like, he fucking loved that record. I'm like, okay.
Hell yeah. And then we get to White Devil Armory, which this year does mark the 10-year anniversary of this album. I love this album. I've heard I got the special edition. You did like a song Miss Misery featuring Mark from Accept. So how did he end up singing
Oh
on
yeah.
that song?
We always try to do a cover or two, bonus tracks here and there. We tried to get in touch with Nazareth to have their singer, Dave McCafferty. He's passed away now too, I think. But we wanted him originally to sing on it, but something happened. He lost his voice, or he didn't have time, or whatever it was. And so we thought, okay, well, what about Mark? Mark would be great on this. Similar kind of voice, got a voice like Blitz, that kind of AC/DC scratchy kind of voice. And he's a Jersey guy. We've known him forever. So I forget I think he had Accept might have been in the studio with Andy Sneap, and we knew Andy and we knew Mark, and we sent him the song, and Mark just sent it back to us. Easy. Mark came up on stage with us somewhere. We played in New York. He came up and did Dirty Deeds with us. But that record, again, was a similar mindset to Ironbound and
Electric Age.
And Electric Age, yeah. And it was almost at that point, like they were saying, 1 and 2. This was almost like a triplet. It was like a 3-package kind of deal.
Yeah, because I feel like you guys were on fire with those last 3 albums. Because I consider you guys like the most consistent band in metal. It's like H has not affected Overkill at all. Like you just keep bringing out albums every fucking time.
Well, I mean, I like writing songs, so I just keep at it. Why not?
And then we move on to the Grinding Wheel. I love this album. It has a special place because this album cycle was the first time I ever saw Overkill live ever. So tell me about making this album.
That one kind of was a change. We were looking to change. Like we had done Ironbound, Electric Age, and White Devil, and that seemed like a 3-peat right there. I was like, okay, well, we're going to change some things now. And I think on that one, I was thinking. I was trying to, or I was just interested in stuff that was a little bit more metal, not quite as thrashy. And I thought, even though the energy was really good on the first 3 records, I was trying to control the energy a little bit more. Sometimes in our zest for putting a lot of energy, it gets a little frantic sometimes, which sometimes is great. But sometimes I really like the way Metallica will be. They'll have a ton of energy in their songs, but it seems very controlled. And I love that. So I was probably going for that a little bit more on this record, trying to bring in a little bit more metal roots rather than thrashy roots. And I love that record. I thought we definitely achieved that. When I listen to that, it sounds like it doesn't sound like the songs are going along and we're holding on for dear life. It sounds like we are absolutely in control of the songs.
Yeah, like Mean Green, Killing Machine, Goddamn Trouble, Our Finest Hour, all great songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember seeing you all on that. The first time I saw Overkill was, of course, on this album cycle. You did that tour with Niall. You played at this place in Little Five Points in Atlanta called the Variety Playhouse. And I remember meeting you, and I had like a bunch of Overkill CDs. I remember you were jokingly saying, like, is there any CD that you don't have?
Yeah. Well, even now, I'm like, oh my God, you're going to go through this whole fucking thing. We're going to be here forever.
Yeah.
He's like, you got every record.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, almost. I'm missing a few.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But then, of course, going into 2018, you finally made the official kind of like Verni kind of solo band. You did the Barricade album in 2018.
Right.
So how did that idea to be just like make it just like completely just like solo under your name?
Well, I felt like the Bronx Casket thing was kind of finished. Like I said, okay, I buttoned that up, and I wanted to try some different things. I wanted to do some heavier stuff, not overkill heavier stuff, but I thought that first Barricade record I really love. And that was again a record where I did everything. You know, those are fun to do sometimes. You play all the guitars and oh no, I actually didn't on that one. I did the demos on that one. On that one, Virus played all the guitars. I did the demos and I had Virus play the guitars on there, but I sang everything on that one. And I wanted some rock stuff on there. I wanted some punk stuff on. I wanted a lot of my root stuff, a little metal, a little thrash, a little punk, a little, a little bit of everything. That's why I thought it really should be a solo record, because it was more not about a genre really so much as it was more just about me, kind of what I grew up listening to, where kind of my roots were, kind of sprayed all over the place. And Zeus mixed that record. And that's the first time I worked with him. And I really like the way that record sounds too.
Yeah, totally. And then, of course, going into 2019, you did the last Overkill album, The Wings of War, the previous one. Loving this
Right.
first album with Jason Bittner of Shadows Fall on drums. So how did he end up joining the band?
Well, Jason, Ron, we knew Ron was going to leave the band because he had work stuff that he had to do, and he had gotten married and just wasn't going to be able to work anymore. And we knew Jason. We had known him for years. He used to come up to shows years and years ago. He was just a guy that we knew in Albany that would show up. Really didn't know much about Shadows Fall at the time. I knew that he had played with them. I think he was playing in Flotsam and Jetsam when we first called him, and just kind of talked on the phone a little bit, and he seemed up for it. His head was in the right spot. I think he had just filled in on some Anthrax shows. It just made sense. It was a comfortable change. He's a great drummer. That part of it was easy. So we went back and forth with some phone calls, and then we had done a bunch of shows too. So when we did that record, it wasn't like he just walked in for a record. He had done shows with us. He knew our material too. He was a fan of the band, so he had a lot of our records. He knew our history. It was pretty seamless to have him come in and do that. So that record went pretty quickly, pretty easily. He's a pro in the studio. He's done a bunch of records too, with Shadows Fall and a million other things that he's done too. So
yeah. Yeah, did he bring in something like new rhythmically to Overkill that you all didn't have previously?
Well, one of the things is Ron, when he comes into the studio, he doesn't have everything worked out. So he would do takes, and we would just keep taking takes, and then we would pull fills from here and pull fill from here. We like this spot. We like this spot. This is cool. This is cool. Jason's completely different. He's got everything mapped out. So he's not, we'd hear a fill and he'd be like, nope, 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 nope. And we were like, what's wrong with that? He goes, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not the right one. I was like, oh, okay. This is a whole different vibe. He knew what he wanted to play. He had worked it out beforehand. He knew what he wanted to play, why he liked it. He was much more like that. Whereas Ron was he was more kind of a jam kind of guy. He would play, like if he played a take one and take two were different. All the fills were different. Things were different. Take three was different again. Take four was different again. He just played whatever was in that moment, and then we would piece it together. So Jason brought that kind of stability. And even when we played live, he was much more about, he knew the tempos of all the songs. He was just, more locked in with that. Whereas Ron was much more kind of free form. Even live, it would be like, there was no tempos. It was what Ron felt like at the time. He was pretty good at it, but It wasn't, the kind of consistency that Jason had.
Yeah. And then you toured for a little bit because I remember then, of course, like the certain virus that shall not be named happened, which, and funny enough, the last show I saw was before the pandemic was, of course, you guys. So during that whole time, because I know like the whole music industry during the whole pandemic kind of like fucked up the whole thing. So for you personally, how did you manage to sort of like cope with that?
Well, I had a lot of friends that were like kind of depressed and just, I'm not inspired to write, and I'm not, just sitting here at home, and it wasn't like that for me. I mean, I have two daughters, and they both live in Manhattan, and they came, everybody kind of did that. They came home to live with us. We were all here together. So it's like I had this whole wave of my family living in the house again, and making dinners all together, and they were working out of the house. They were around the house, like, they were in their 20s. So you never expect that's going to happen again. So I kind of like that. And then I have a studio at home. So I was in my studio every single day. Life wasn't too bad for me. It was weird not playing shows, but it was like, wait a second, I'm going to have day after day after day, week after week after week, where I can be in the studio. Like, I can't go anywhere. I can't go to the store. I can't go here. I can't go there. It's like I have nothing else to do but to be in the studio. It wasn't so bad for me.
Yeah. Because I
And
know,
I want to write in a lot of records
yeah.
in that time
So you
frame. I
did
was
that.
busy.
Cause I know you did at that time. You did Dee Verni and the Cadillac Band, which I thought was really good. When I remember seeing you like sing and play guitar, I was like, "This is the same guy that was in Overkill." I was like, "Wow."
Yeah, that was a step out. It wasn't like Bronx Casket. That was like,
Sounds like
oh my,
something very Vegas-y, like.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of the vibe of it, like a little rockabilly, a little bit of big band, swing, rock and roll. I absolutely love that kind of music. Love playing in that band. Love being involved with the horn guys, the girls, the piano players. That is, um, I'm doing another record for that right now. That
Oh
is
wow.
absolute top of my list. I
Yeah.
just so much fun.
Yeah. And then kind of flashing forward to last year, you did the latest Overkill album, Scorched, 20th
Right.
album. Hard to believe you're now at album 20. Like, how hard is it to like make album after album? Because this is 20th album, which is crazy to think about.
Um, it's just we just got on a cycle, and I've been on it, that 18-month cycle. And so it just, after years of living that way, it's just normal for me for material to accumulate. I'm always writing. I never stop writing. It's not like, oh, just because we haven't made a record, I haven't done this. Like, I have other friends in bands that like, oh, I got to do a new record. I don't have anything. It's like, what do you mean you don't have anything? You did your last record over a year ago. Yeah, but I haven't been writing in that time period. I'm like, oh, well, that's why. Say, I'm always writing, so I always have at any given time. I mean, right now, if you told me we need 5 new Overkill songs in the next 2 weeks, I could go in the studio and put them together. I have material put aside to get me going, at least get me started. So, and I'm doing that with all these projects. There's always material put aside, put aside, put aside. So it is, 20 records is still a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I still,
and how hard is it to like put a set list together with having so many albums out?
yeah, you know, it depends too. If like, we don't rehearse a ton. So if you had a band that really rehearsed a lot, where you had like, suppose we had, I don't know, 40 songs. So every night the set list was different. We pulled and swapped and pulled and swapped. It's just, you can do that and it'd be a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work and a
Yeah.
lot of rehearsal, which we don't do. We're kind of scattered all over the place. So it's not like, hey, we'll just get together and kind of hang out and just play these songs. It's, everybody's got to fly in, have hotels. It's kind of a whole thing.
Yeah.
So that's probably not in the cards for us. I get envious sometimes when I see Metallica and they'll do stuff like that, where they'll just mix up the set list, whatever, pull from here, do whatever you want, which is great. Like, if you're rehearsed and ready to go on that and doing a lot, they do a lot more shows than us too. So, but 20 records is a lot. But the way I think about that is I'm still chasing Motorhead. I
Yeah.
think Motorhead has 23. That means I need to get 3 more.
Yeah.
to catch Motorhead. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
3 more. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, have you ever thought about doing like kind of like an evening with just like have like you guys just like no opening acts, just play for like 2 or 3 hours to play like almost everything?
I don't think I would ever do that. It's just boring. I mean, I don't care. I mean, to me, any band, I don't care who it is, it can be my 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 favorite band of all time. Once you get past 90 minutes, I'm bored. It's like I just don't want to see. And you can have moving trusses and pyro going off and stuff moving around and try to keep it interesting. That's great. But after 90 minutes, I'm bored. So uh, I'm bored as a fan watching the show. I start to look at my watch. So even playing, it's like I wish the sets were shorter. I mean, I'd rather play 70 minutes because I think it's better. It's more impactful. But you have to give. I think you have to give people at least 90 minutes. But I would never. I'd never be
Yeah.
interested in doing a 2 or 3 hour. Oh my God, no,
Yeah.
boring.
And being as it has been a year since Scorched has been released, have you started working on the next Overkill album? Like, what's the status with that?
I'm starting to pull stuff together. I'm thinking, probably in the fall when I'll start kind of molding it. I mean, sometime probably early next year, right? January, February, March, somewhere in there. We'll have to start kind of pulling it together, thinking about recording. So I got plenty of stuff put aside and ready to go with that.
All right. And then last but certainly not least, we got your new second solo little album coming out soon. So tell me about making that album, Them Dreadful Company,
Well,
which
excuse
is
me.
out today, actually.
Out today, actually.
Yeah, I
That's true.
almost forgot.
We did a couple of lyric videos for that that were fun. And actually, the first video, Lunkhead Charlie Ferrante from Anthrax played. But a lot of people think he played drums. I'm like, oh no, Charlie didn't play drums. He played guitar.
Yeah.
So yeah, which was very fucking cool and cool of him to do that. I was, I knew on this one, I played everything on this one too, and I did a lot of the solos too. The first record I did had a bunch of kind of shredder guitar players, and that wasn't going to work with this one because I wanted this one to be much more of a punk rock record.
Yeah, it sounds very punk rock. Kind of reminds you of a lot of like Ramones and stuff.
Yeah, there's some Ramones, there's some Green Day, there's some Sex Pistols. There's some metal in there too. So it's kind of a mix. I like the way Volbeat will mix kind of punk and metal. And even the Metallica, like when Metallica would do like the Misfit songs or So What, I like the way they kind of bring a metal edge to a punk rock song. So it was kind of inspired by some of that. And I just always wanted to do kind of a punk rock record, since I was, we were talking about the Lubricants before. Since I'm a kid, that's been on my list to do, to just say, all right, let's just do a punk rock record. So it was, again, during COVID, had a lot of material, started looking at it, and I say, wow, I think I have enough for a record. So then started to kind of build it together little by little. And before I knew it, I had another record. This record has actually it's coming out today, but it's been done for, oh God, at least a year. But sitting on a shelf, just kind of waiting for a time that kind of felt right to get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of wanting to switch topics because talking about your bass playing, because I know you've heard your fair share of bass player jokes and memes, but I love how you don't gravitate towards flashy bass playing, but instead I feel like you find ways to link what the guitars are doing with the melody and what the drums are doing with the rhythm. So for you personally, what's your approach to like tracking and playing bass?
Well, there's a lot of times I hear people talk about, oh, your bass lines. That's like, I'm not playing any bass lines. I mean, bass lines, you're like in a funk band or a blues band or whatever. It's like I basically play rhythm guitar with 4 strings. That's basically what's going on. And so this is my approach anyway. And so it's really the main thing for me is thinking about whether I kind of hold down the fort and play a more traditional, like an AC/DC kind of thing, where I'm just holding down the bottom end, or Jason Newsted kind of a deal. He does that pretty well. Or whether I'm going to follow the guitars and just act like a second rhythm guitar. And then you can kind of do little fills and little things here and there. But I don't even do a ton of that. I'll try and have, if there's a bass part, it's a bass part. It's not a fill. It's the bass plays and the guitars join, or the guitars are doing something and the bass now is playing along with him. So, and to just have the songs not be so one-dimensional, like I said, you can do that with the bass, to me, by holding down the fourth or following the guitar line. So, and where you pick to do that really kind of takes the song, kind of puts a better spot for the vocals too, to kind of see what they're doing, whether, because if you get out of the way a little bit, the vocals have a different vibe, and try to give Blitz something to do rather than just burying him with riffs all the time, where it's like, where the fuck am I supposed to sing? So that's what I try to do mostly.
Yeah. And I'm also curious about like your setup when you play live and record, like what kind of basses that you play in terms of like strings, pedals, and amps. I know you play like BC Rich basses. I'm always curious about like your setup.
Well, I play the same bass. I've played the same bass for 40 years. I have a BC Rich Widow. I play that. People keep thinking it's different ones, but it's just, I keep repainting it and changing the colors. It's the same one. I've been playing the same bass forever. And live, I play completely different rig than I use in the studio. Not one single thing is the same. Live, I play my Widow, which I always play. I play SIT strings, stainless steel strings, and I play PV amps and PV caps. And I've played that live since the demo. That's what I use forever almost. And then in the studio, I don't use any of that. On the studio, I bounce around, try different basses and different stuff. I've used a lot of different things. I've used a bunch of BC Riches. I used to use an Ironbound that I used years ago for a little bit, that I saw Geezer Butler playing. So I'm like, all right, I got to get an Ironbound, an Ironbird. And I used that for a bunch of years. And then I used, I have a Warwick that I got on a bunch of records that I really love. The last bunch of records, maybe the last 4 records or so, I used a Fender. Actually, a Frank Bello. Frank Bello gave me a bass when he was at Fender, and I used a Frank Bello bass that sounds fucking ridiculous, really good. And I use a dark glass pedal. That's what I've been using on the studio recordings, but the same stainless steel SIT strings. And I don't know, people a lot of times will ask me how I get my sound, and it's really it really is your hands. I mean, I can pick up an Ibanez bass and play through an SVT, and it sounds like me. And I think a part of it is I play hard with my left hand and my right hand. I don't finesse the instrument. I'm playing hard. And I think to get the sound that I get, I don't need a compressor on anything, because I hit every single note as hard as I can hit it. So I don't need a compressor to, the compressor will bring out some of the lower notes that you play. It's like, I don't have any lower notes.
Yeah.
They're all consistently, because I'm hitting them as hard as I can. That's probably how I blew up my shoulder after all these years and had all these operations. So, but yeah, that's what I'm doing on the bass.
Cool. And so kind of in the end to sort of wrap things up, what's next for you? I know you got some tours lined up, and I suppose there's this rumor of you guys and King Diamond doing a tour. And I know you also have the solo album out now today. Is there anything else with like Overkill or your solo stuff or any of your other projects you'd like to plug?
Well, Overkill is we're going next week. We have a festival in Portugal, this Vagos Festival, that I'm psyched to do. We haven't played in a little bit, so it'll be fun to get out there and do that. Then we have a US tour, not US, a European tour. We have a bunch of festivals on that, kind of some festivals and some headline shows. That'll be fun. And then we'll see what's going to happen in the fall here in the States. We'll have to just see as we get to that. For my solo record, I get asked about shows all the time, and maybe I will do some shows. I think it could be a lot of fun. It just have to see the right situation. If it's going to be a hassle and a pain in the neck, then I'm not interested in doing it. But if it is fun, because for that I'd have to round up a band. I don't even have a band for that, so I'd have to ask some people to come play, which could be fun. I think that would be a lot of fun to ask some of my friends who's around put a band together, rehearse for a little bit. Maybe some festivals would be fun for something like that. I don't know. I'm just kind of playing that by ear. So if something comes across my desk and it looks like fun, it's like this will be a good time, then I'll go out and do them.
Awesome. So thank you, Didi, for this conversation. It's great to have you on. It's just any final words you want to say to the viewers that are watching this to close this out?
Well, probably see you out there on the road. I mean, that's where I kind of run into everybody sooner or later with whatever I'm doing it, whether it's Overkill or a solo thing or my swing band. We're looking at some shows for that later in the year too. So I'll see you out there somewhere.
Awesome. So everybody, Didi Verni, we'll see you next time.